In the middle of tremendous darkness and personal tragedy, false lights are trying to guide us, and they can bring shipwreck. We must be focused on God's pathways and His light in the storms of life. Christ is the light of navigation. Hello and welcome to the Light of Navigation and this Reflections podcast. My name is Marguerite Lever-Woodall, and I'm an author, speaker, and your host. In these podcasts, I love to explore and examine different life issues. We can find their solutions through the lens of God's wisdom and words. In this 8th episode called My World, I'll share an intimate look at one of the main belief systems or worlds I lived in for years. I'm betting that it's also true of many others as well. Has it been yours? Let's find out, shall we? Join me in giving thought on the tough issues of life, and let's discover God's pathways through them. I had just experienced a devastating betrayal by the man I'd recently married. Stunned, I stood there in the dining room, looking across the living room area and out the window that faced our neighborhood street. Everything around me faded out, and time seemed to stand still. The devastation and pain I felt ran deep in those moments. As I stared out that window in the minutes that followed, a sudden revelation played out visually in front of me. The window itself became a snapshot, a still photo with a window frame, and it was displaying the sum total of what this world contained outside. A supernatural unveiling visually was overtaking me as I looked. Standing there, I saw all of the world's darkness, its hardships, tribulations, and selfishness in a singular moment of time. The Lord was showing me the world as it really is. At the same time, I became acutely aware of another world that I was personally engulfed in and was living in daily. It looked like a protective bubble that was surrounding me physically on the outside. A shift occurred visually for a second time, and I saw simultaneously the real world through the window and the one that I had created for myself to live in. The one that I had created was meant to protect me from the reality of what I was now seeing through that living room window and its truth. This false world of my making had led me to marry for all the wrong reasons. The reality of a fallen world was being contrasted against my own fabricated one, with God's direction in those moments. This was a dynamic, Holy Spirit-directed divergence playing out before my eyes. I've only experienced a handful of visions over the years, and this was one of them. A veil was lifted from my sight that I was not aware of, and the Holy Spirit was directing it. This event in my life gave a new definition to the term eye-opening, and it was life-changing as well. The world the Lord was showing me in those moments through that window was not the world I had created and lived in my heart and mind all my life. Are you wondering what world I had constructed for myself? It has a name, you know. How many of us have chosen to enter into a marriage that failed badly because we married out of our loneliness or our selfishness? Been there, done that after I was widowed. A fabricated world of our own leads us there. 5 years after my first husband's death, I remarried because I was tired of being by myself. I had deceived myself into believing that I was in love, and this was my moment of rescue by a needed husband. All of life would then be perfect, I thought. Loneliness and or selfishness spurs the creation of our own perceived world. It's a world that is the way we want things to be and how we want things to turn out for us in life. It's those rose-colored glasses that we wear. I've lost my son as well years later, my only child. In the middle of this, an awareness of the fear of being alone is something I'm having to face to a greater degree than most. There is now no possibility of a daughter-in-law or grandchildren in my life because of having had my only child die. This has intensified the feelings of a solitary life that I face. Now, several years later, and more than ever, I feel alone. This is an inevitable emotion that I must face and I need to walk through. And it's not just in mine either. How many of you feel it too? We become so vested in our families and the activities in our lives that the fear of being alone is most often not faced. It's a good thing to be vested in our family and friends, and it's a wonderful part of relationships that God intends for us. However, if it all leaves us for one reason or another, we're left facing this reality that's been there all along and not acknowledged. I don't like facing my fears, but I know it's mandatory if I want to walk in a deeper measure with God. Of course, I could take another route and try to cover over the aloneness with someone else or something else if I chose to do so. And gentlemen, you are also not above being caught in a snare to avoid loneliness. As I've mentioned before, there's the worlds we create to escape to. We want to escape the harsh realities of living in a dark world that will try to chew us up and spit us out. You'd be surprised how many of these worlds we can mentally manufacture. Of course, we have a lot of gaming, books, and shows through media to help perpetuate this world building that we love to do. It's frightening as a woman to realize there's not a knight on a white horse, and for a man to realize that a sexy, perfect, mother-like bride doesn't exist. We subconsciously count on those to bring us the ultimate peace and an undisturbed life journey. We are alone because no one can come through for us as we hope for, at least not perfectly, if at all. No one can fill us completely. No one can love us in totality in every way. All the stuff that this world offers doesn't last long. It's temporary. I realized I have an opportunity here in this paradigm shift that has taken place in my life. It's an opportunity to be driven more deeply into the arms of God and search out greater intimacy with Him, like the scriptures speak of. There's a paradox here. I must first embrace and acknowledge that I am alone, so I can embrace the truth that I am not. I'm alone because of everyone's fallenness as well as my own, but not ultimately alone because of the love of God and an active relationship with Him. This way, I can embrace the reality that God is with me every day in every way. There needs to be the acknowledgement of this solitary condition in our lives. It hauntingly undergirds all of life itself. Our deepest need is for our Creator's companionship first and foremost. A husband, a wife, or stuff won't stop the deep-seated aloneness we are born with. Facing and acknowledging this can lead us to embrace God's presence in a deeper measure. The truth is, we are alone relationally, and it's okay. As a Christian, there is a greater depth of character that is shaped within us if we face that aloneness and turn to God more fully right in the middle of it. As I stood looking out that window years ago, my world came crashing down. A sovereign move of God's Spirit caused the protective bubble surrounding me to come crashing down, and rightly so. I remember the exact moment that I chose to step out of my fictitious world. What was the world that I was living in? It was Cinderella's. If you live in the world of Cinderella, you will always be waiting for the handsome prince on a white horse to rescue you, when really, only one man is coming back on a white horse. His name is Faithful and True. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. I think we all know someone who's going through some of life's deepest disappointments. If this podcast would be an encouragement for someone you know who is, please pass it on. Your comments are valued, and subscribing would also be deeply appreciated. In episode 9 of Reflections for Wisdom, I'll be sharing about a lot of things that seem to nip at our heels in life. I've titled it, All Those Barking Dogs.